The hope of the gospel is our condition, while it is worse than we could have imagined because we can't fix ourselves. The hope is that Christ offers us himself and offers us his record in place of our own broken efforts. So the ultimate message of Beyond the Mask is that while we can't fix ourselves, that desire to be fixed and that desire to be whole is good. That needs to find its ultimate satisfaction in the finished work of Christ.
Mid-South Viewpoint, a Christian news and information feature of Bott Radio Network 640 AM, discussing the news, views, issues, and concerns that affect our community. Join us now for today's edition of Mid-South Viewpoint.
Beyond the Mask brings history to life with a story of Will Reynolds, leading mercenary for the British East India Company. Will has been double-crossed and is now on the run in the American colonies. To redeem his name and win back the woman with whom he's never been fully truthful, Will takes on a new mask to thwart his former employer. As his past closes in on him, Will must somehow gain the trust and the help of his beloved Charlotte, as well as Ben Franklin, as he races time to defuse a plot of historical proportions. The revolutionary Beyond the Mask is a faith-filled adventure celebrating grace, liberty, and the true freedom found only in Christ. Hi, and welcome to Mid-South Viewpoint. I'm Byron Tyler, and today we're going to talk about Beyond the Mask with the director and producer, Director Chad Burns and producer Aaron Burns. They're cousins, and they're joining us right now on the phone. Hi, guys. Welcome to Mid-South Viewpoint. Welcome to Memphis, Tennessee.
Byron, thanks for having us on the air. We're really delighted to be talking to the Mid-South.
I'm excited to talk about Beyond the Mask. I recently had a chance to see a screener copy of this. My wife and my son watched it with me, and we were thrilled. We really were excited to promote this movie, to talk about this movie. Now, movie making was something that you both started getting involved with around the house, doing school projects with members from your own family and friends. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Growing up, as you mentioned, Chad and I are cousins, so we'd get together, over Christmas break or spring break or with our siblings and cousins and friends, and it really just started out as a hobby, something we did for fun in the backyard with the family's video cameras. And I remember Chad and I laugh about it now. One summer we asked my dad if we could build a log cabin in the woods behind our house. He said, hey, that sounds like fun. Sure, why not? We laugh now and say that was his first mistake, because the next thing you know, we wanted to film Cowboys and Indians movie there, and then it kind of all spiraled out of control from there. Growing up, the power of story and the way you can communicate through film was something that we just sort of learned almost accidentally.
Not all cousins have a genuine bond together. What about the likes and similarities between you two? Did you play pretty well together and get along?
Byron, that's a great question. We had certainly interacted as young people, but it was actually, I was in college, and Aaron was just going off to school when we first started working together, going off to college. We first started working together seriously. I was looking for a business partner. I was thinking I wanted to do tech startup. Aaron was pursuing sort of a business track in school, and we started working together. The projects we were doing got bigger. Money started to be involved, and we found that we trusted each other. We could work well together. It was really something that organically grew over time, and by the time we both graduated, many years later, we kind of looked at each other and we said, well, we should give this a whirl. And so that was 8 or so years ago now.
Really fun to see God working, and sometimes when you're in the moment, you can't see what he's doing. But when you look back, it's just so much fun to see what he had planned and see him planting seeds and see him training you and preparing you for the challenges that he has in front of you. And when we look back, we can definitely see God doing that through our childhood and through our experiences and relationships together.
Well, I was just thinking about the dynamic duo of the Irwin brothers and the Kendrick brothers, too, both family-related and making faith-based films together.
That's true. And, they have made some fantastic movies, Byron, and they're actually good friends of ours. Stephen Kendrick, he's the guy, of course, involved with Fireproof Courageous, the new movie War Room, which folks should also go see later this summer. Those guys have really poured into this project. Stephen co-wrote the script for Beyond the Mask, along with a guy named Paul McCusker, who's the former creative director at Focus on the Family and is well known for his hundreds of Adventures in Odyssey episodes. So those two guys, who are really top-flight Christian creatives, came together to help with the creation of the script. They have made, the Kendricks Irwins, they've made some great movies in the last decade and really opened a door for people like Aaron and myself, I think, to step into this space, and we're really grateful to them. And our desire is to take that really gospel-centered storytelling that they have pioneered in the last decade or so here and pushed that forward into an action-adventure space. Create a movie that's a little more accessible for a younger audience.
That's what I really like about Beyond the Mask is the opportunity for imagination in a time period setting. You know, most faith-based films deal with current life crises, and not to criticize those, but it's not always as creative either. You allow the viewer to step back in time and imagine what it's like to meet Benjamin Franklin.
Byron, I think that comes out of a couple of things. One is just Chet and I really have an adventuresome spirit and probably an overactive imagination. If you met me growing up, I was constantly playing and imagining and running around in the backyard. Either I was Davy Crockett or King Arthur or somebody in between. And we really wanted to capture in this film that excitement and that fun and the adventure that we loved so much growing up, and to communicate that to audiences today on the big screen. And you know what's so cool about that? When you're watching a movie, the first goal of most film goers, you want to be entertained. You want to break from life and a break from the struggles and the trials of the daily grind. But, you know, it's also interesting, if you look back through the course of history, the concept of using story to communicate lessons is as old as the Bible itself. And God, you know, from the very beginning, would use stories and illustrations, whether it's through the prophets or through the Proverbs or through even Jesus used these stories to communicate. So as you sit down to be entertained by a fun, adventuresome story, your audience is automatically opening their mind to wanting to engage with the themes and the lessons and the ideas that are wrapped up in that film. And when you set it in a distant time, in a faraway place, in a fun setting like that, people let their guard down and they just want to interact and engage with the story. And allows us to communicate a message very powerfully through that context to maybe an audience member who, if it's set in a modern time, they would say, oh, you know what, I can see these people they're doing the church thing or they're doing the God thing, and, you know, I'm going to wall myself off from that. And we found that people are really, really receptive to the message when it's presented in a context that is fun and is different from our current day setting.
Was the storyline totally both your ideas, or did you get together with Paul and Stephen to write the script or take the idea to write the script to them? How did that all come about?
Byron, you know, any large creative project like a film, and that is a huge creative project with hundreds and hundreds of people involved, it is a team effort. There was a nugget of an idea that I think initially came to Aaron. I remember him calling me one evening, chatting about some ideas he had. And over the course of time, he and I got together several times, actually, over the course of several months, and put together a packet with just some sketches and character sketches, so like, you know, writing, talking about, okay, this character might be this way, and pictures of period weaponry and things. And then we started praying the Lord would send us a writer. We were also actively pursuing writers. Paul McCusker very graciously agreed to sit down with us, and that was huge because Paul is like the real deal. He's at Focus, and he's doing big projects all the time. He's very busy. So we were really honored by that. When he took a look at what we were interested in doing, he said, yeah, I'd like to be involved in this. That started a long and very fruitful relationship there. We also worked, like we talked about earlier, with Stephen Kendrick. Both those guys just contributed a ton to the story and really crafted the script.
What, did you guys flip a coin or draw straws to see who would be the director of the film and who would be the producer?
It was a good old-fashioned brawl. We both put on everything. It's kind of something that just evolved over time, and we've talked about it before, that, you know, someday those roles we might flip around. But what really is fun is Chet and I both work very closely across the disciplines, and I think that's one of the things that can make us a strong team, because Chad is a very producer-minded director, and I'm a very creative-minded producer. So we get to share a lot of those responsibilities together, and that makes it more fun for both of us. We feel really blessed the way God's gifted us and led us to work together on this. And then so many other people to the team. A friend who we grew up with who is now our visual effects supervisor and our director of photography, Ethan Ledman. You just look at this guy and the visual effects in this film that it takes to recreate 1775 London, Philadelphia, India, these sets and locations. And then Chad's brother, Nick, who's obviously my cousin as well, is our creative director, and he's our production designer. So he's drawing the sets and the sketches. And my sister's our costume designer. So you say, oh, my word, hundreds of these period costumes, where do they come from? Well, that's our team hundreds of volunteers who said, hey, I believe in this idea of telling a story that's gospel-centered, that's Christ-centered, but is an action-adventure film that brings history to life. Where can I plug in? So many people jumped on board to be a part of this adventure with us.
Well, this movie wasn't made in the conventional way of making a film. You started out raising funds through Kickstarter campaign. Can you explain that process?
Yeah, we wanted to engage with our audience and our fans early. Aaron was just mentioning we knew that we couldn't do this without the support of a lot of people. So we really wanted to put that out in front of them early and use that as a little bit of a gauge or a bellwether. We did create a Kickstarter campaign, and honestly, some of the funding that we raised through that helped us with the initial working with Paul, paying for airplane tickets to get out to meet with him, and also some of the initial locations that we were able to lock in early. So that Kickstarter phase was really, really important to give us a little bit of seed funding to get the ball rolling, because the movie took a lot more budget than what we raised on Kickstarter. That was just the beginning.
Oh, sure.
But we needed that foundation or that platform to give us the time to create a business plan and begin pitching investors and doing all those other things that go along with a large project like this.
And you really created a sense of community, too. Before the movie even got started, you could depend upon prayers and the belief of fellow Christians to come alongside you.
There's no question about that. And just seeing, that's something that Chad and I are talking about all the time, just how humbled we are by the kind of people and then that God would send to join arms with us. Really, the name of our production studio is Burns Family Studios, and it sounds a little bit homegrown because it is. It's the core is Chad and I and our families, but then all these other people who join our filmmaking family. And this is whether it's a volunteer, local person who wants to do catering and provide a meal for the crew, or whether it's a Hollywood movie star, flies in from New Zealand from working on major motion pictures to be there. You know, it's such a fun blend of seasoned industry professionals with folks who've been working in Hollywood for decades, and then volunteers who came in to join our family to create something that was really a unique environment and a really what we consider our filmmaking family. Just to see God provide that part of that journey, very, very exciting.
Is there a single theme or message that you guys want viewers to walk away with after seeing Beyond the Mask?
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking that, Byron. We do, and we want folks to go and see it. The movie was designed for a theatrical experience and encourage your audience to make sure they get a chance to view it in theaters. Take their friends. The theme that the Lord really laid on our heart has to do with where we find our identity. I think the gospel of Jesus Christ, the gospel is really cool because it's like a diamond and it has many facets. And Jesus uses many different analogies. When he talks about the gospel, he talks about a shepherd. He speaks of himself as a king. He speaks of the gospel as being pictured in marriage and romance. And there's all these different angles. Well, the one that the Lord laid on our heart here has to do with the idea of where we find our identity. What we're really thinking about here is this notion of what makes me okay, what makes me respectable or acceptable in the eyes of others. How do I combat and overcome the evil that I find inside my own heart and my own life? And these are really, really important and fundamental questions that all of us grapple with. And in the story Beyond the Mask, we have a character who's got a bad past. He's got some things in his past and inside of himself that he knows are wrong and that he wants to set right. And he struggles and he wrestles to do that, but ultimately it's in his own strength. The hope of the gospel is our condition, while it is worse than we could have imagined because we can't fix ourselves. The hope is that Christ offers us himself and offers us his record in place of our own broken efforts. So the ultimate message of Beyond the Mask is that while we can't fix ourselves, that desire to be fixed and that desire to be whole is good. That needs to find its ultimate satisfaction in the finished work of Christ.
What a timely message for today's culture. I think we're seeing all around us people looking for identity.
You know, there's really no question about that, and especially for young people. You look at our culture today, it has such high expectations and such high demands. It says, hey, be your own person, create your own life. The person you have to become and the image that you have to build for yourself to be accepted. These demands are actually impossible to fulfill. So what do? We start to build masks for ourselves, and we start to say, I'm going to use my Facebook profile, and I'm going to only show the best things. I'm going to pursue achievements in my life that will make me appear to be a better person so that I can live up to these cultural expectations. And as we work and we strive and we wrestle and we build, a disconnect between who we wish we were and who we actually are, we start to see that grow wider and wider. And especially for, as we said, for young people today, this is something that Chad and I wrestled with. what is it that makes me good enough? What is it that I can do to feel okay, to impress the people around me, to impress myself, to ultimately impress my Creator? What's so fun is that the gospel very clearly gives an answer to that question, that you can take off the mask that you've been building to fix yourself, and you can put on the robes of righteousness that Christ has earned on your behalf. And then at that point, you can move forward to do the good works that he's called you to do. And then you can live that life that you've been wanting to, not through your own strength, not because of your own merit, but through the strength of Christ. And that's the message and the theme that's woven throughout Beyond the Mask. And it's not like tacked on the end as a sermon or something like that, but we wanted to make it real, because that's the journey that God has taken our hearts on. It's such a journey that we wanted to share with our audience as they experience the film Beyond the Mask.
How did you do the casting for the movie? All the actors do a great job making their characters so believable.
Yeah, we were really fortunate to work with a great casting director in L.A., a gal named Bev Holloway. Bev does this for a living. She's out there in the industry. She connected us with some fantastic folks. And, the script itself was the key here, because we shared the script with John Rhys-Davies. Would be a great example, the guy who plays the villain in our story. John Rhys-Davies is well known for his role as Gimli in Lord of the Rings, and he plays in Indiana Jones and about 200 other famous movies. John is a career professional actor who's done a lot of work. When John's team, when his agent, when they saw the script, they said, hey, we really like this and we want to be involved. And it was the same thing with our acting coach and some of our other key talent. The story is what was attracting people to the project. So it came back to that really great work that Paul McCusker and Stephen Kendrick had done to craft a story that was attracting to some really great and talented folks.
We look at that as one of the miracle moments on the project, the people who God sent our way. We had 1,200 applications for the leading role of Will Reynolds. So you say, wow, that's awesome. We started sorting through them, and one by one, God was telling us, no, that's not going to work. And we filtered down all the way through the very last couple of auditions, and there was some strong characters and some strong applications and some strong actors, but for whatever reason, we just weren't feeling comfortable with these characters, with these casting choices. And so we were really praying, God, just a couple weeks out from launching production, and we don't have our lead cast yet. And so it was at that moment we were praying with our board of advisors, a group of men who counsel us and mentor us along the way. And they said, hey, listen, God will send the right person in his time. It was just the next day after that, I believe, that someone sent an email and said, hey, have you met Andrew Chaney yet? Has he auditioned for your film? And he said, no, I don't think so. He was in L.A. right there. He was able to come right in. And, I mean, the guy looks like an assassin.
He does.
Has the build of an athlete and the right haircut, and just a great guy, super fun to work with, and nailed the accent, nailed the role, and so neat to see God provide him just in the right timing. It was just so much fun to work with him and with Kara Kilmer.
From Chicago Fire.
Yeah, just a beautiful girl on the inside and the out. Just an absolute honor to have her on our team.
This film really has everything for moviegoers to enjoy: adventure, romantic love, humor, and that story of personal redemption we've been talking about. Was it difficult maintaining a balance for all these elements throughout the movie?
Hugely complicated, yes. There's no question that maintaining a balance between all those different demands is really, really important, and something you have to think about every day. The movie is a 4-quadrant film, and that's a Hollywood term, but it means that 4 quadrants are young, old, male, and female. And the movie plays well, both for kids and adults, both for men and women. And it has an action component. It has a romantic component. It has the adventure component. Absolutely balancing all those different audience members' needs was really, really important. And we worked hard to have a gritty, realistic story, but to keep the violence at a PG level. You're not going to see any gratuitous violence in this movie. It is rated PG. It's a great family movie. But we still deal with some deep themes. We sort of show some of the hard edges of reality in the story, and we wanted it to appeal not just to kids, but also to high school students and college students and to parents and grandparents who are going to take their kids to see the movie. So that is a balancing act. We are really, really pleased with the finished product and pleased with the reviews we've been getting. Byron, we received a 94% from the audience on Rotten Tomatoes for our opening weekend, which is phenomenal, and we were really, really honored by that.
That's huge.
A lot of really great reviews of the film, and we've been just really, really excited to see how people are enjoying the movie. And you got to see it in theaters. It's playing at the Malco Cinema 16 right there in Memphis. All across the Mid-South. You can go to BeyondTheMaskMovie.com and find other theaters in your area. The movie's got 700 visual effects shots. It was mixed in Burbank. on a great sound stage. It's designed to be experienced in a theater, and you want to catch it in theaters before it goes away. This is summertime. We're up against the big Hollywood blockbuster, $200 million tentpole movies. We're not going to be in theaters long. Come see us today.
Yeah, and the Malco Town Cinema Theater in Collierville is where you want to go. Listeners, you won't be disappointed. You talk about special effects and the computer-generated effects and how they really can change the climate of a movie, especially with all the new and improved technology that's available in today's filmmaking. How were you able to utilize all these special effects so masterfully? Because I'm telling you, you guys did a phenomenal job with that area.
Well, it really is fun. One of the things that we love about a period piece or an adventure story is the opportunity to go beyond the scope of a modern-day drama that's set in the kitchen and the hospital and the church. You get to go to the sailing ship and the battlefield and the rooftops and all these other fun places. But, Philadelphia, London, 1776, these places don't exist anymore the way they look. So you kind of have a couple options. One, you can go to the few historical buildings that remain, and you can ask them for permission to film there. And we did some of that. But then you say, okay, now explosion scene and the battle scene, and then people get a little antsy with their historical buildings. We couldn't figure out why. So
they don't want you blowing stuff up, I guess.
For some reason, I don't know. That's where we said, well, hey, let's build portions of these sets. So we built the back of a 17th century sailing vessel. We built a 150-foot section of Philadelphia City Street with Ben Franklin's print shop right off of it.
You built that?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Amazing.
Yes, and the whole Windmill set, we built the first half of the Windmill and that whole set surrounding with all the docks and the piers and everything. And then once you have the key elements that the characters are interacting with on sets, the backgrounds, the faraway distant skylines and horizons, to build and flesh out the world, that's what you use the visual effects for, and you extend it through the visual effects shot. So when you're watching the movie, the audience doesn't know what is sets that were built and what is sets that were CG, and it's really fun to watch it in the theater. And one thing that Chad and I laughed about is we had a fight scene takes place. Our hero is escaping from a church, and he's racing kind of through gentle snowflakes. He's on his way running from the bad guys. Well, we filmed that scene in the middle of the summer. Certainly no snow. And when we showed it to the team, a year past we had filmed it, they had forgotten, and they said, oh, man, it was cold that day. We said, no, it wasn't. All the snowflakes were added later. Sort of the fun and the magic of storytelling.
It's kind of like Frank Capra back in It's a Wonderful Life. They filmed, I think, that movie in July, real hot, and they showed snow on the ground.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Hey, what were some of the memorable and miraculous things that happened behind the scene, those stories that happened with you and the actors and the crew? One story stand out that took place.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a particular story of the Lord's provision. This is the kind of thing, Byron, that honestly in my life has only happened once or twice. I know when I was a kid, I'd read about it in books, about missionaries, how they'd have a need, and like the exact amount of money would come in an envelope or something on the day that they needed it. It seemed like that kind of thing was always happening for people in Africa or somewhere else. We had an experience like that at Beyond the Mask. Back in the beginning, when we were raising money to make the movie, we needed a certain sum to come in by June 15th. That was an absolute hard deadline because the seasons were beginning to change, and we were simply not going to be able to shoot the movie that year. And if we didn't shoot it that year, we weren't going to be able to shoot it at all if we didn't have the money by June 15th. We were a long ways away from having the sum that we needed. And in that last week, the Lord began bringing in the amounts. And then on the very last day, on June 15th at 8 p.m., the last chunk of money came in, and it was the exact amount that we needed, that we had set as this is the amount we need to know that we're supposed to go forward, like 3 hours before midnight. And to us, again, that kind of confirmation and very, very clear leading has only happened a few times in my life. But it was really exciting to see the Lord so clearly saying to us, I'm in this, and I want you guys to go forward with it. And I remember Aaron saying the next day or shortly thereafter, he said, from here on out, circumstances, that was a circumstance. The Lord led through that circumstance. But once we had that clear leading, from here on out, circumstances were no longer going to dictate to us if the Lord was telling us to quit. We were going to view all circumstances as an obstacle to be overcome because he had already led us to move forward in this. That was a really cool moment.
What a great story. I know our time's slipping away here. I got a couple quick questions I want to ask you. This sounds probably crazy, but have you already thought about a sequel or your next film project?
That's crazy.
Chad and I, that's crazy. No, so people say, well, what are you up to next? And we said, well, Beyond the Mask is in theaters now, and so this is the next for us. So first of all, go check out the film. It's in theaters this week. And all the years that we've spent working on it, and now is the moment that we can share a story that God's laid on our hearts. It's so much fun to watch audiences react to it, hear the responses, the testimonies that people said, through watching this film, I've realized I need to be freed from my masks, and I need to rededicate myself to finding my hope in Christ. And the testimonies and stories that are coming in are so encouraging to us. That's what would inspire us to go and make another film. And so just seeing the audience responses these last weeks has been just a really, really encouragement. And to watch people enjoy the story and the kind of reviews and feedback we're getting. So we'd ask for your audience out there in Radio Land to be praying for Chad and I and for our team. The Lord would lead clearly and provide. We have a couple of script ideas that have been floated around. We'd love to see if he leads us and where he leads us next.
Since I'm kind of a techie guy when it comes to cameras, I love video. What camera did you mostly use during the shooting of this film?
We shot the movie on Red cameras. That's a big brand now in the business. We had two cameras, but the one that we used primarily was called a Red Epic. Very same camera that Peter Jackson used to shoot his Hobbit trilogy, or I guess it was now turned into 4 movies ultimately. But that camera shoots in super high definition, so we were shooting beyond HD when we were shooting the movie, and you can do super slow-mo with that camera. So there's a few scenes when coming in and out of the water, and we kick into some real nice slow-mo, and the music is rolling, and other scenes when there's a jump or a stunt that will cut to that slow-mo angle. So yeah, we used some really, really great cameras.
And we didn't even mention the music. Who did the music for you?
A great composer, German composer, who's actually in Texas now, a guy named Jürgen Beck. He's been doing music. He started off in kind of the Christian music industry back in Germany decades ago and transitioned into film more recently. We just had such a fun time working with him, creating that epic score and fitting it in with the period of the movie, Beyond the Mask being a period piece, but also being an adventure piece. It was really fun to create the own musical signature for it, and just a really fun creative process working with Jürgen.
If you want to experience the score the way it was designed to be experienced, you need to see it in theaters. It's the only place you're going to get that full 5.1 surround sound, and it was totally mixed and pushed into all 5.1 channels, so you're going to want to experience that in theaters.
Final question, what encouragement and advice would you give aspiring filmmakers wanting to communicate their faith in Christ through media?
Well, the first thing I would say is seek the Lord, see what he has for you. And if you say, hey, film is a chance to get rich and famous, to be cool and play with technology, I would highly recommend a different path, because that's not what it's like. It's hours and months and years of very tedious work sometimes, and it's very challenging for your faith through those dark times in between. But you know what? If God is in it, then we believe that what God calls you to do, he'll give you the grace to accomplish. So as you seek him and trust him and seek the mentorship of other people around you, and if the leading is there for you to do this, then I'd say nothing will hold you back. Move forward in faith. Don't be afraid to start small, and don't be afraid to dream big, and it'll be awesome to watch what God does through your efforts.
Yeah, and as a practical step in the waning moments here, Byron, I'd say if you're a person of faith, and that's important to you to be doing your work in that context, there are some great Christian film festivals, the Christian Worldview Film Festival in Texas, and there's 2 or 3 other large Christian film festivals. I would encourage you, a young person, to take the time to go to one of those, go to the workshops, and immerse yourself in that. You can find out pretty quickly if this is a passing interest or more of a long-term passion, I think.
It's Beyond the Mask, now showing at the Collierville Malco Town Cinema 16. Friends, go and see it. Support this movie. Take your family, take your Bible study group. Tell all your friends, go and see Beyond the Mask at the Malco Town Cinema in Collierville. Now's the time to do it. This weekend's coming up. Great time to go see the movie. Chad Burns, Aaron Burns, thank you guys for what both of you are creatively doing for Christ's kingdom and communicating the gospel through movies like Beyond the Mask and whatever God might lead you to in the future. And I really appreciate you being our guest today on Mid-South Viewpoint.
Oh, well, thank you. It's so much fun to talk to you, and we'll be excited to see what God has in store for the future.
Friends, that's all the time we have on this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. I'm Byron Tyler. Hey, thanks for stopping by. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Mid-South Viewpoint. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can email us. Our address is wcrv@botradionetwork.com. This has been Mid-South Viewpoint, another Christian news and information feature from Bot Radio Network 640 AM.